Okay, so welcome to this little tutorial video on the visual system, and I'll be going through basically what we said in the lecture today, but hopefully trying to clarify things a bit. So the first thing I'd like you to see is, or imagine, is the visual world. Everything that you see. And let's just say that this, the green, is your left visual world, and the blue is your right visual world. Okay, so we see these things with our eyes. That's one eyeball, and that's eyeball number 2. Okay, and light goes from your visual world to your eyes, and this is your left eye and that is your right eye. Okay, now what's important is light from the left visual field is hitting here. Conversely, light from your right visual world hits the temporal part of your left eye and the nasal part of your right eye. Light hits the retina from both parts of your visual field and is transduced into electrical energy. That electrical energy goes through rods, cones, bipolar cells, and finally onto the ganglion cells, which form your optic nerve. And for your optic nerve, I'm going to draw them in 2 colors. One part is blue. That is carrying, the blue part is carrying information from your temporal fibers, of your left eye and the right visual field. At the same time, on the left eye, the green bit is carrying information from your left visual field and the nasal part of your retina. So we now have nasal part of your retina going along nasal fibers, which are green, and temporal part of your retina going through temporal fibers, which are blue. And on the other side, it's the exact opposite. The blue is now the nasal fibers giving you information from your right visual field, and the green are the temporal fibers which give you information from your left visual field. So this is optic nerve. Then we get to the optic chiasm. The optic nerve continues. And it reaches a point right above the pituitary gland in the middle, right here, where it decussates. And as I explained, decussation means crossing over. But it hemidecussates. That means that your nasal fibers cross over. So you have this green one, which is the information from your left visual world hitting your left eye's nasal part of the retina, being carried along fibers in the optic nerve, which are nasal fibers, crossing over to the right side of your brain. And the opposite happens with your right eye. The nasal part of the retina of your right eye receives light from the right side of your visual world. Now the nasal part of your right eye is on the left side of your right eye. Hits there, goes into nasal fibers of your optic nerve, and that in turn crosses over. But what about the rest? What happens with the rest? Well, on the left, your temporal fibers keep going down, following the nasal one, the green ones, and when it reaches the crossroads, the decussation, instead of saying, "Nah, let me go with my green friend," he says, "Nah, I kinda like my blue buddy, he's family." So he stays along with the part of the optic nerve that had decussated from the right hand side. And now we're noting that all the information from your right visual field, from your right visual world, is now in the left side of your brain. All of that information. And conversely, everything from your left visual world is now on the right side of your brain. So now what happens? These fibers reach the thalamus, and a particular nucleus of the thalamus is divided in several nuclei, and this particular nucleus is termed the lateral geniculate nucleus, or lateral geniculate ganglion. The word nucleus and ganglion tends to be used interchangeably. So, now we have a situation where the thalamus, which we've known as the relay station of the brain, now produces more fibers as the optic radiation and these land on the famous V1, which is the occipital cortex. Okay, now this is, as I said, the very basic mechanism how light goes from your visual world through your brain to land on V1. And then more interesting things happen from V1 onwards. Now, as I said also during the lecture, somewhere along this pathway, some fibers are transmitted to another area of your brainstem. Let's say this is your brainstem. Okay? And that is responsible for subcortical aspects of vision. But for now, just focus on this pathway.